going to be Teraifah up your alley.
It's bloody.
And skirt.
Okay. Ready?
Okay.
Okay. Let's. I'm going to talk to you about questions.
Take notes.
Wait, 1 second. I'm sorry to interrupt you. The pens and paper are for anything new that you learned that you did not know. Okay?
I'm not going to be needed.
Jot it down. I think you will be.
I'm not going to be.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. What we're here talking about today is this question. The title is Sheephead and the Skirt. Okay. You probably recognize the sheep. Well, you'll find out what that skirt is as we go on. Okay. Now, I'm going to talk, but please don't let me just talk for the next hour straight. Everybody, please interrupt me. Okay. There are 5 main things that you think about in order to make meat kosher, not small things. Okay. Anybody have any guesses? One of those 5 main things it takes to make meat kosher? Yes. I know Yaakov's name. That's the only one, and you.
You know my name.
Shida. Okay. What's your name?
That's
What's your name?
My name? I got called up for food.
I don't remember, but I'm not good at
Yeah,
that.
$46.
I thought it was 73.
Nothing?
No, it was
No,
$100.
nothing?
That's not good.
Nati? And you? Simcha. Okay. Simcha and Nati. I'm not good at names. I'll think a few times. Shida, go ahead.
It's easy.
Melicha, okay. Okay, so Melicha is a detail. Melicha is a detail. The thing that we're worried about is that there's blood. Okay? So the Melicha is a way to get rid of blood. There are other ways to get rid of the blood also. Okay, fine. Yes? You have something to say? Yehuda.
I would say the knicker, the checking for if it's a Teraifah or whatever.
Well, that's 2 different things you said. Okay, Teraifah is something else, yes? Okay, so there's 5 things. Let's do 5 things like this. One is you have to make sure it's the right species, okay? You can't eat a pig, okay, or a horse, okay? That's the first thing you have to make sure it's a species that or a kind of fish that you like to eat, okay? Next is shechita, Yaakov said. Okay, Teraifah, what Yehuda said, okay? A Teraifah, which is what we're going to be talking about today, is, what Teraifah means is, there are certain things that are wrong with the animal, something, we'll say, unhealthy about the animal's not going to live for a year, that animal you're not allowed to eat, okay? So we're going to talk about examples of that. The most famous example of that is, anybody?
Goldfish?
No. Something that's wrong with the animal that because that he's not going to live.
What's called a wound?
Yeah, a wound. What kind?
A mum.
No, not a mum. A mum is not enough to make it. That's from the Mizbech. You can't have a mum. Yehuda?
A worm in the head?
No. If it has a hole in its lungs, okay, the most famous one is it has a hole in the lungs. Okay, so there's many things that can make an animal. There are many things that can make an animal into a treifa. Okay, the most famous is, and what we check for all the time, is that if there's a hole in the lungs. Okay, so we're going to talk. We're going to talk lots about treifas today. Number 4 is there are certain fats that you're not eating in the animal, and something that's related to that's called the gid hanasheh. You're not eating a certain kind of fats in the animal. They have to be cut out, but you have to sort of pierce that. It's called nikur, to cut out those fats out of the animal. And the other thing is blood. Okay, you now have blood in an animal. So one of the most common way to get rid of the blood is melicha. But melicha, what Yaakov mentioned, melicha is an example of how you deal with it. But the blood is the real issue. Okay, so these are the 5 big things you want to make sure before you eat a piece of meat. Okay, these are the 5 things that have to be taken care of. We're going to talk about today about treifas. Okay, now treifa, I told you there are many ways an animal can become a treifa. The most common one is a hole in the lungs, and therefore after the shechita, there's a person called a baidik. It's called to check. Liftoik needs to check. So the baidik checks the lungs to make sure that there aren't holes in them. Okay, and that's its own special thing how he does it.
How does he do that? Does he stick his
Hold it out.
If you want to know, he checks it first inside the animal. He sticks his hand inside, and then he pulls it out and he blows it up. They used to blow it with their mouth. That's most baikim nowadays wouldn't do that, but they used to do it with their mouth. I've seen people do it with their mouth. They blow it up. But nowadays they use a pump. They attach it to a hose and they push with their foot pedal. Yeah. You don't get the hands really so dirty, and you blow it up and you see if there's any holes in it. Okay, so now let's think of this for a second. When you shech an animal, let's say a cow, it's more for a cow than for a sheep. Okay, how many pieces do you think that animal gets cut up into while it's still in the slaughterhouse? Okay, before it gets to turn to hamburgers, how many pieces? Just think for a second. Before that, in the slaughterhouse, how many pieces does that animal get cut into?
23.
20.
5.
You guys just randomly throwing that number?
No,
You just think about it. What do they cut it into?
777.
No, not 777.
20, no.
613.
Okay.
5.
No guesses. Use your check. How do you get 5? Okay, tell me how you get 5.
Because of the body and
Okay.
then we cut off the lights.
Okay, so body and 4. Okay, that's at least an intelligent answer. What do you think? 6? What? So a head and 4 legs in the body. Okay, Yehuda?
Well, they cut off the back. That's one piece, because
Okay.
the back isn't usable, right? So, and then all 4 legs, I'm guessing are cut, so that's 4. A 5th for the back, a 6th for the head, and a 7th, I'm guessing they just, cut it up a little bit.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you, for the kosher side of the shechita, these are the...
Oh, I thought you meant all together.
These are the most common parts that have to be broken into. Okay, there may be more. There may be more depending on how, because later on, with that middle one that's called the 4 quarters, okay, the 4 quarters is a huge piece. You'll see a picture of it later. It's a really big piece. So it gets cut into small pieces later. But you have to cut it, you take off the hide. Okay, the first thing that happens is they take off the animal's hide. Okay, now sometimes you want the hide to be kosher. I don't even know why
So
would
you can use it as cloth.
Well, you could actually use cloth from any kosher animal. It doesn't have to be from a shechted animal. Why would you want to...
For tefillin, I would.
If it's tefillin, you can make it from any kosher animal. It doesn't have to have been shechted. You can just...
Isn't tefillin usually from an ox?
Yeah, from a cow. Okay, so we use the word cow loosely. Okay,
I don't know what their intestines are. Can you show us a picture?
which one?
Hey!
I could if you really want to see one,
Yes,
but not for today.
I saw someone pull the guts out of the chicken.
Okay, so the hides are used if you want to make gelatin. I was going to bring it, I forgot to bring it. But if you want to make like marshmallows, kosher marshmallows with beef gelatin, you have to make it from an animal that was shechted properly.
4/4?
A 4 quarter is the quarter. The word quarter. A 4 quarter is the front part. The front
I don't like
quarter.
that.
Okay. What's how marshmallows made?
Yeah.
The part that we care about is that in order to make it gel and gooey, you need to have gelatin. Usually that's trace. So they now make out of kosher animal animal hide.
Gelatin?
I thought they
Use
make
fish
it out of
gelatin.
marshmallow fluff.
Yeah, they made a marshmallow fluff.
Oh,
Okay, so wait a second. So we cut the animal into all these parts. Okay, so now what happens like this? They take out the lungs. Okay, and the first they take off the hide. In the meantime, the animal's been cut into all kinds of pieces. Well, how, if we find out that this lung is kosher or treif, how are we going to figure out which cheek belonged to this animal or which tail belonged to this animal? It's being cut. There's people in the factory cutting all kinds of pieces. How are we going to know when we figure out that this lung was kosher or was treif, which liver belongs to this? How do we figure that out? Yes.
How many animals typically are they working on at the same time?
A zillion. Because, they keep on checking. So the animals are all over the place. So there's a whole rack full of cheeks. Okay, well, how do we know which cheek belongs to which one? Which liver? There's a room full of livers. How do we know which liver belongs to which animal? Yes. Yeah.
That sounds like a good swim.
What? They tag it. So the answer is they tag it. Okay? They get tags that have numbers on it, or there's other versions of that. They have tags with numbers on it, and they're
I
going
don't
to
think
put.
it's a cattle brand.
And there's a person who's there putting on numbers all over the place. Now, those numbers are being put on for the Kashrus reason, because we want to check the things, but it's also the government also wants it. The USDA watches to make sure the animal is healthy for its purpose. Excuse me?
What's the USDA?
USDA, United States Department of Agriculture. They check up on animals. They check up on animals and anything and dairy and things like that to make sure it's safe.
Doesn't the room have to be 97 degrees below Fahrenheit?
Whatever they have to do, they do lots of things. But they check the animal also. Now, if they decide that this animal is not healthy, and they don't want to allow it, they also want to catch all the pieces that belong to it. So the USDA also is pushing to get the numbers on the right animal to make sure the pieces are right. But the mashgichim also paying attention to make sure that each piece gets numbered correctly. You don't want, if we're going to make kishka out of this animal, when we use its intestines to make kishka, to make what's called casings from kishka, then we want to make sure we have the right one connected to the right lung. Okay? Yes. They sell.
Yeah. They still use real kishkas?
There's such a thing.
Stuff.
Yes, there's such a thing. Okay, so now, I'm going to tell you, what we're going to talk about today is the following question. They went ahead, if everything works right, then the tags are all on the right pieces. I'm going to give you 4 scenarios where what happened was there was something wrong. Okay? And somehow, there's an animal you'll see in a second big. We know that the animal's trace, but we lost track of which pieces it belongs to. Okay, 4 cases. So I'm going to tell you 4 cases that it could happen or could happen. 4 all cases that actually happen where you lose track. And the first one's like this. We're talking about tags is for a regular shechita for animals. Okay? When you shecht for chickens can also be treifas. And chickens is not so complicated. And with chickens, what they do is like this. The chicken, the part that you're going to see in the supermarket, is by itself. And all the parts that could be a treifa are separated. They've been separated from each other. But they're right next to each other on a separate line. There's a belt moving around. Over here is chicken number 27. And right here is the insides of that chicken number 27 also. Okay? And they're running together. The person checks the insides to make sure everything's okay. And if everything's okay, fine. If not, he pulls off chicken number 27. Okay? So they're running parallel to each other. So if there's something happens and he decides that the insides are treifa, he gets up the chicken also. One day, they're sitting there and they realize that the machinery got out of sync. So chicken number 27 was with insides number 26. Okay? The machinery was not synced properly. And so every chicken that he pulled off was really kosher chicken. And all the treifa chickens got left behind. Understand what happened? There are 2 lines. One's holding the insides and one's holding the outsides of the chicken. Okay? And they weren't in sync with each other. So when he found out that chicken number 27 was a treifa, he pulled off a chicken out of it. He pulled the chicken over and said, no, we're not using this one.
But that one was really
It was really number 26. The lines weren't in sync with each other. So at the end of the day, he had 10 chickens on the side that he thought were treif. They were really kosher. And in the refrigerator, there are 10 chickens that are really treif. Okay, and he had no idea which one. They all look the same. Okay, that's case number 1.
They didn't get numbered themselves. They just...
In this case, it wasn't a numbering issue here. The lines have to be in sync, and the lines were not in sync with each other. Something was wrong with the machinery. That was case number 1. Case number 2. Okay, I'm going to read my own handwriting. Too dark in here. Okay. No, don't turn the lights. No. Okay. Okay. In another case, it was similar to that, but using the numbers, the numbers were not working right. Okay.
How do you spell sync?
SYNC. Yeah. Another case, a similar case, but this was with numbers. The numbers weren't in sync. Okay. Now, for our sheep. Okay. Now, I told you the main thing that they check for in treifas is in the lungs. They also check the intestines also. Okay. Any guess why you only check those 2 things? Why do we only
check?
There's 18 or 24 different ways to animal become treifa. Why do we only check these 2? 1 and maybe 2. Yes, yeah.
Because it can only happen in those places.
No, it could be checked in 18 or 24 places. There's lots of places that become a treifa. Why would we only check 2 of them? Yes.
If it happens in the other places, then it definitely happens in those.
That's a good guess. Also, it's not true. No, they're unrelated. Like it could have something wrong with its leg and not wrong with its head. Yes.
Those are the most fatal ones that and they end up destroying everything else.
So that's similar to what he said. You think that one leads to the other? No, it's not accurate. They're independent. Each one can do its own thing. Okay, Yehuda.
I kind of know this.
That's why I called it Yehuda.
I know.
Yeah.
That it's because the other ones are so uncommon that Torah tells you don't have to worry about them. So that the lungs are the most common, and the rule is it has to be much. It has to be common. You only have to look for things that happen once in a while. Like, for example, if you have, at home, you check your vegetables to make sure there's no bugs in them, right? So you probably check lettuce and cabbages and things like that. But nobody checks carrots for bugs, because you can't remember the last time it happened that there were bugs in the carrots, so we don't bother checking it.
I can't remember the last time there were bugs in any kind of vegetable.
Well, that's because you didn't check.
Well,
you didn't check. If you would check, you would have found bugs.
That's because in your house, when your mother finds a bug, she screams and quickly throws it in the garbage. Well, I know about it because in my house when we find a bug, my father calls on and we're like, oh, that's so cool!
Right. Anyhow, so everyone has their own entertainment in different ways, right? So we look for the lungs so that it's common and the intestine in front of us. Okay, well, what we're going to talk about is the following. There's something called meningeal worm. Okay? You guess what the meningeal, that word means? Yes,
That's a worm that I wish I could eat the meat and that.
Well, close. What is the word meningeal? Any idea what that word means?
Wait, how did you come to that? That was a really good answer.
Because it's a worm that can sometimes be found in animals and so it might feed on that.
Yes, but look at the word meningeal and see if anybody knows what that word, what that means. Brains. It has to do with the brain. Okay.
How did you get that?
Right. Meninges is a coating of the brain.
Is that
Okay?
brain apple?
So it's a worm that comes into the animal's brain. Okay, now,
It eats the brain pretty much.
well, I don't know what he eats. That I can't
Pretty much
tell
a
you.
zombie worm.
But I don't know exactly. But the problem is it's not the worm per se. We're okay with having the worm there. The problem is if he makes a hole in certain parts of the lining of the brain, the animals are trained. Okay, now here if you
Wait, you went too fast for me.
Okay.
The fact that the worm is there is not a problem.
Right.
Just the fact that it's...
the problem is the hole in there would be the problem.
Oh.
Okay, now if you look on the right side, you can see our worm over here is actually live.
Some chicken or something.
Here he is. You see that? You guys see the worm?
brain?
Yeah, the left. That's the same worm. I don't know if you can see the worm with his two eyes. And there in the picture.
That's the eyes?
I thought that was the worm.
This is the worm.
Now I see it.
This is the worm and his eyes. Okay.
Look at the owl. Can you replay it?
I can try to replay it. Can you see him moving over there? Okay. So there's our worm moving around inside this animal's brain. Okay.
Disgusted?
Now, wait a second.
A little bit.
How did anybody notice that there was a worm inside the animal's brain? Okay. The reason is like
They
this.
cut it off.
The reason is because on Rosh Hashanah, people eat the head of a sheep. Right? There are people who eat the head of a sheep.
Yes,
So
right.
they eat shehela rosh v'loy l'zanav. Well, in order to kasher,
We eat the other type of head of the sheep, the gummy sheep.
no, we eat the head of a fish. Most people eat the head of a fish. But if you get a head of a sheep, that's what you're supposed to have. Well, when you want to get rid of the blood in sheep's head, you have to cut it open first before you do malicha. So,
These like a hatchet.
so they cut it open to do malicha.
Chainsaw.
They cut it open to do malicha, and lo and behold, here was our friend, our squirmy wormy over here, walking through there. Now, the problem is like this. In the sheet, I told you, they take all the pieces, they know which piece belongs to which, and they check the lungs for the animal, like they always did, of the sheep, and he was fine. And then this head was designated. Now we have a big pile of kosher heads that are being saved for Rosh Hashanah.
Except
Okay?
look what it looks
Now they cut them open, and when they cut it open, they found this worm crawling around inside there.
These worms
And
get to people's heads.
I don't know. They crawled it open, and they cut it open, and they found
Almost.
the worm. They found the worm, and now they know that one of the sheep that they have in the refrigerator is treif,
So one liver,
but they
one
don't
head.
know. But they don't know which one it is. They got a head. They know that it's treif because it's got a hole because this worm is squirming around in there. But they don't know which animal is treif. Yes.
So why can't they just cut them open? What do you need that head for? Besides like the tongue?
In this case, they want the head just for Rosh Hashanah. They just want it in. But the problem is not the head. They can throw the head out. The problem is the rest of the animal is now treif. So now in the refrigerator there's 50 sheep, okay, and they think they're all kosher, but really one of them is treif. We don't know which one it is. One of those sheep is treif because the head is treif. So I mean the rest of the body is treif also, but we have no idea which one it is.
Tacky.
So at this point, when they put the sheep with the kosher, they had already taken off the tails. Didn't make a difference anymore. Once we knew the lungs were good, they said, no problem, it's fine. And they put it to a big pile of heads. And now when they're there, all of a sudden they realize that one is treif. So now back in our refrigerator, we've got a treif sheep, but we don't know which one it is. Yes?
Why can't... I know it's Batwa Shishim, but it probably doesn't work because it's not like Batwa Shishim, part of these animals are treif, is that one animal is completely treif and the other animals are completely kosher.
Okay,
It's not like each animal is a
it's
little
not
bit
Batwa
treif.
Shishim. We're going to talk about whether it should or should not be Batwa. Okay, so that's the first case. That's the third case we have. I'm going to have now the fourth case. Okay, remember our title was the sheep head in the skirt. And that was like this. Okay, this is a cow. Okay, in case anybody doesn't have a beautiful cow.
I thought it was a chicken.
Yeah, well,
Is that
Wait,
top
let
of
me
the
drop
cow?
this. Let me drop this.
okay, and now is the inside of the cow. Okay, this is the respiratory
Is that the
system.
stomach?
This is the respiratory system of the cow. This is how it breathes. Okay, that's his lungs, and that's pipe going to the up is the conduit for the animal to breathe with. Okay, that's the respiratory system of a cow.
Isn't that one of the things they cut?
When they shecht it, yes, that's the respiratory system. Now this is the digestive system of the cow.
Ugh.
Okay, now
There's a piece of cow.
and that long tube is the veshet that brings the food down to the back. Now, if you realize, so again,
I see
look at this.
that.
Kana, this is the respiratory system, and this is the digestive system.
They're right next
Okay?
to each other, right?
Well, but one's in the front and one's in the back.
Right.
Okay? And here they are together. But between them, okay, these are the two parts of the animal, two
Isn't there
parts of the
diaphragm?
inside, and in between them is something called a diaphragm. Okay,
Yeah,
the humans have one also. There's a diaphragm, and the diaphragm sits in between the respiratory system and the digestive system. So I think in your body, when you breathe, what's going on is your diaphragm is moving up and down, okay, in and out actually, and it's helping you breathe, and it's completely separated from the digestive system, which in a human it's lower down, and in an animal it's further back. Okay, so that's the diaphragm is in the middle. Now, here's this is actually not just the four. I thought it was going to be four. It's actually the whole side of it. There's a whole side of an animal. Okay, this is the front. This is where the head goes over here. This is the whole animal. When we say fork, we cut it down the middle like that.
What kind of animal is it?
This is a cow.
Oh,
Okay, now, when you can see it, you can see it just a drop. You see this line over here? You see this piece over here? This was the diaphragm. Okay, this piece over here was the diaphragm. You see here ribs? This was the respiratory system over here, the lungs, and this, and the heart, and this was the diaphragm. And the diaphragm, if you look in this picture, you see what it's like this. It's sort of white in the middle, and on the edges there are muscles. Okay, there's a muscle, one on each side. And that muscle is our skirt. Okay? If you ever come and eaten skirt steak, you ever have that?
Yeah.
Okay, no, it's not corned beef. Okay, skirt steak. There's actually two things that are called skirt steak, but this is one of them. And that is, it's the muscle from one side. See, it's this long thing. It's like maybe 3-4 inches across and 2 feet long.
Is the other side also skirt stick?
Yeah, the two skirt steaks, the two skirts on the diaphragm. And there's another thing called the skirt steak also. That's not for today. Okay, so that piece over there is called a skirt.
That's not the muscle part.
It's the muscle part. It's this part,
Shouldn't it be
the
tough,
muscle
then?
over here, one, and this is the other one.
Shouldn't it be tough, Abba?
Yeah, right. Why is it? It's like a thin piece of meat.
I can't tell you why it is or is not tough. That's not my job. I don't know. So that's called
He isn't being paid to find out.
that's called the skirt. Now, what it is like this. It used to be that when a shochet did his job, he shechted, the shochet's salary was to take home the skirt. That's what he got.
So you get the
He
whole
got to
thing?
take home the skirt. Okay.
That's kosher meat.
It's considered a good piece of meat.
And it's a big piece.
And it's a very specific piece. And it's not too much. It's not like you give him one roast or something. This is a very specific piece. They would give it to him.
It's 4 feet long, Abba.
They would give him the skirt. Okay. And I actually was watched once when I was in the shechita. Nowadays they don't do this anymore. When I was in the shechita, and I see the boidik. Remember the boidik is the guy who checks for the treifahs? And he's standing. All of a sudden I see him walk away for a second and take a piece of meat, stick it under his table. And I'm like, what's going on? What's going on? What are you sneaking in over there? So he said I think it was the skirt ended up in the wrong place. The way they cut the animal ended up in the wrong place, and it was going to end up in the garbage. Because of the way they cut it and this and that, it was going to end up in the garbage. So whenever he sees that, he swipes it, and he takes care, he kashes it himself, and he eats it. It was about to go in the garbage anyhow. No one's losing it. So he just when he sees that happen, he swipes the piece, sticks it on the table, and then later at night, takes it home, he kashes it, and leaves it
Pretty
home.
much free barbecue.
What?
Pretty much free fish.
It is free food. It should go in the garbage. It's just the way it's done. There's the wrong part of the factory to be dealt with. They would throw in the garbage.
Abba, it could be that for when they're dealing with a cow, so it's this much steak, they're not going to sit there and try to figure out and check that it doesn't happen.
No, they would want it to not happen. But what I said
They're
happened.
not going to pay someone to sit there and watch for that because
So
it's
he
too small.
swiped it. Anyhow, so the shechah used to get this. And what
Why
happened
did you
was,
swipe it once?
what happened was, this happened about 200 years ago. What happened was, everything was going the way it was supposed to be, and everything was great. And when the shechah got home, he realized that there was something wrong with this skirt. It wasn't actually skirt, the whole diaphragm. There was something wrong with it, and the animal was a treifa. Okay. So now again, he's got a piece of meat that he knows is treif. He's going to throw it out. No problem. The problem is he shechted 8 cows. Let's say today. One of those cows is a treifa. So there are people at home who are making food for Shabbos who don't realize that they have an animal as a treifa, and he knows that one of it is because he's got the skirt in his house that he knows is a treifa.
Hopefully the meat is still in the shlachtas, and it's that much easier.
Well, we're going to talk about that in a second. But he's got the meat. He's got the skirt by him, and he has no one knows anymore which meat is the kosher meat, which is the treifa. Okay. So I gave you now 4 scenarios where, even though everyone tried to do the right thing, but something went wrong, and we have one treifa animal or chicken mixed in with everything else. Okay, there are 4 people here. Each one of you give me one case that I told you.
I have 4.
We'll start from here. You could be last. You could do it.
Book.
I remember I gave you 4 cases that we can end up that the animal that was treif ended up mixing with the other animals, and we don't know which one it is. Okay, we have 4 cases. Do you remember any of them?
This one?
Okay, you have easy. Go, you were first. Go ahead. What's the case? What do you remember?
That we brought it home and realized that the skirt steak was straight, so the whole animal was...
Right, so there's a floating around animal, somebody else said, okay, Yaakov.
The conveyor belts were insane.
One of the chickens, okay. Simcha.
The meningeal worm was eating its way into the lining of the animal's brain.
Good, and it had already been decided. We knew that this was a Kosher part, a big pile of heads. We don't know which...
There's one head, and then there's the bodies are 50 head and bodies.
Good. Now, you read the heads apart, because I said another case so fast you probably didn't even hear it.
I did hear it.
Okay, what was the 4th case?
The tags went wrong.
The tags are wrong. Very good. The tagging system wasn't working right.
See?
And very good.
See?
Very good. And...
Chip off the old block.
That's it. So,
The old
the
block.
old block, yeah, the old guy over here. So, okay, so we have our 4 scenarios. So what's the din in this case? Okay, we have one trait animal, and we have dozens of other kosher animals, and we don't know which is which. Okay, so it din's like this.
I know we do, Abba.
This is what the Shulchan Aruch
We
says.
cry and we come and
This is what the Shulchan Aruch says. If it happens, if you realize the mistake and the meat is still at the slaughterhouse, if the meat is still at the slaughterhouse, then it's going to depend on, I'm just going to tell you in a second. Okay, it may or may not be buffalo. The piece of meat that's treif may or may not be buffalo, depending on what I'm going to talk to you about in a second.
You better not get tested on this.
As long as you're writing it down.
Okay, that's if it has at the shechita. But what happens?
No, I mean, you
What
won't test it.
what happens if it left the shechita? Okay, what happens if it left the shechita? Then
Wheels weren't turned, Abba.
I'm sorry, my wheels weren't turning. If it left the shechita, then the din is that the animal is kosher. Whatever left the shechita is kosher.
Why?
Why? Because we assume that you got the ones that were not the treif ones. Let's say there's 50 kosher and 1 treif. If it left the slaughterhouse, you assume you got the one that's not the treif one.
Perhaps something they have it from the bar or something like that?
It's impossible to figure out now. There's no way to be mabaro now.
Even if we're still in the soft.
We're going to talk about in the slaughterhouse in a second. But if it left the shechita, then you say, I assume I got the one that was not the treif. Okay? There are 50 kosher and there's 1 treif. So I say, I got the one. I can assume. We say there's a rule called the parish meruva parish. I got the one that left from the majority, and therefore I got the one that's kosher.
But Abba, if it's in the slaughterhouse, you can't say that because then you're saying, yeah, it's in the slaughterhouse, but we know one of these is straight. At your home, you say, I have 1 piece of meat in front of me, 1 piece of meat is kosher, but at the slaughterhouse, I have 50 pieces of meat, and 1 of them is for sure straight.
Okay, well, at the slaughterhouse we can't say called the parish. Called the parish means whatever left from the group, it left from the main part of the group.
Well,
Okay?
could you take
So-
one animal?
I can hear you.
Someone's going to get a treif one.
Someone's going to get. You say all of them leave.
Yeah.
Right, but that's very interesting. So I have a question for you. Okay, Yaakov's making a point, and I have a question for you. I told you that a certain amount of animals are trained. Let's say the amount is, 15% of animals are trained. Okay? So I'm going to tell you a question that's based on what Yaakov just said. Well, when you drink milk, did anybody check that animal to make sure the cow wasn't a treifa?
No.
No?
There's also
Well,
checks.
I
didn't. No one checked. No, you can't check the animal because they have to get CAT scans if you want to find out what's going on with the animal's a treifa or not, right? It's inside. So
And after the cats would be killed.
if 15% or 20% of animals are treifas, how come we drink milk? Aren't we drinking milk from treifas? How about when we get eggs? Eggs come from chickens. Well, no one checks the chickens if they're treifas. So how do we know that the eggs are not
You're
going to be
you're not allowed to drink milk from a treifa cow.
Correct. If it's a treif, if the cow's a treifa, the milk is not kosher either.
Same
So
with
this is what
Yaakov.
Yaakov didn't realize what the question he was saying. What Yaakov's question is that isn't somebody going to get the treifa? That was Yaakov's question. Which is, and I said, well, the milk, it happens all the time. They go to Lamer's Dairy, and the Mashiach stands there while they make Chol Yisrael. But guess what? There are cows that are picking that are treifa, and he can't see. He doesn't have
No, but
X-ray
they
vision.
don't know if it's. What they do with the cows, they don't. What they do is they just milk them. They don't cut them off.
Right, that's the problem. That's the problem, that they didn't cut them up. So, I mean, some of them are, let's say there's 100 cows, and
That's right.
5 of them are treifas. Well, then how does anybody drink any milk? How do you know that you're not getting, why do you get treif milk?
This one doesn't concern me.
Why doesn't it concern you?
I don't care.
Do you eat
Oh
yeah, that's fine.
You eat ice cream?
okay.
You eat ice cream?
No, it's lactose.
Lactose
No.
intolerant? Okay.
I don't
You
eat.
have cheese?
I don't eat cow milk, but I eat goat milk.
Goats also got treifa.
I know.
1 second, you could eat cheese but not milk.
Yeah.
Right, no lactose. Okay, so you eat cheese, you eat egg. So those things. So the answer is
That's why I have that disgusting. That's why I have that disgusting rice stuff.
Oh, I have coconut milk. You have the green bottle?
No, I have almond.
Oh,
okay. So
almond.
Okay.
so the answer is this rule called the parish Meruba parish. We assume that I got for the majority. We assume I got for the majority, even though, like Yaakov said, somebody's drinking the treif milk. So how can we do that? How can it be we can all drink the milk, even though somebody drank the milk? And the answer is, how come we don't drink treif milk? Because Hashem said so. Okay, well, Hashem said, these are the rules. Called the parish Meruba parish. If it comes out from the roiv, you're allowed to drink it. So he makes the rules. He said, don't drink treif milk. He said, if it comes from the majority, you could drink it. That's good. Good for him. Good for me. Now, I don't have to be worried about that. Hashem says we're allowed to eat it. We're allowed to eat. Don't worry about the fact that somebody ends up with the
Treat
treif.
it as everything as a hike.
Okay, it's not right. Those are the rules.
Guys,
Okay.
this is distracting.
Okay. So now, what happens if, in the case of at the slaughterhouse? So the Shulchan Aruch says you can eat all the meat, but there's two things that would make it that it's not buffalo. Usually it would be buffalo, except that there are two things that could go wrong. The first one is called Davar shebiminyan. Okay, you ever guess that means? But Davar shebiminyan.
Hey, that's worth 10.
Well, the word minyan, you're used to the word minyan being 10, but with number. Very good. So what is it, Davar shebiminyan?
The amount.
What do you say?
The amount.
In many, okay. Try again.
The amount.
Okay. Yehuda.
I don't know.
Okay. Davar shebiminyan, it's a thing which is counted. Okay? Things are, in order for something to be batal, we have to say it's like so meaningless, it's batal. But there's something that's special, that when we have this thing, we count it, like we have a dozen eggs. Well, we're going to hear some examples in a second. We have a dozen eggs, you count them. Each egg is a specific thing. Then that can't be batal, if it's counted. Now, there are three things in the Gemara. What does it take to be called a Davar shebiminyan? Okay? Rabbi Kiva says there are only 7 special things that are considered Davar shebiminyan. These are so unusual, they count them. Okay? That's the only thing.
What about a ribeye, Abba? Like everyone is...
Wait a second, please. According to Rabbi Akiva, no problem. According to Rabbi Akiva, it's no problem. It's not one of these 7 things. It's going to be batal. According to Rabbi Yochanan, there has to be something that you always do it by count. You always sell this thing by number. You never sell it by any other way. You never look at it by any other way. Okay? So, in Yehuda's example of the ribeye, a ribeye, you go into the store and you buy them by the number. I say, I would take 3 ribeyes. You do it by number. But the butcher doesn't do it by number. The butcher sells it by weight. The butcher sells it by weight. When you go to the store to pay for it, he doesn't say it's $1 a ribeye. He says it's $1 a pound. Okay? He doesn't do it by number. He measures it by some other way.
Well, at a restaurant, they do it by the number.
By the piece, right. But in the supermarket, they do it by the pound. Okay? And that Rabbi Shlokish says that has to be something that's sometimes counted. That's what's called the Davar shebiminyan. If you sometimes count it, like a ribeye, sometimes you count it, you think, I'll have a ribeye, or I need 4 ribeyes, then that's considered Davar shebiminyan. Okay, so there's 3 different shittas as to what it takes to be Davar shebiminyan. Whichever you hold with Davar shebiminyan, it cannot be batal.
These are all things that already happen at the point that they're being sold or being distributed.
We're trying to decide, is this something very special or it's a regular kind of a food? So a ribeye is a special food according to Reish Lakish because some people do it by the number. You say, I'll take 2 of those.
What's in it?
Isn't that any piece of meat that's being sold?
Is what?
Doesn't it fall under the category of sometimes?
Yes, according to Reish Lakish, but according to Rabbi Yochanan, it's not because it has to be always counted.
Okay.
So let's say you might say I'll take a tongue. You do it by the number, okay? But that's Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan says it has to be something you only sell by the number, like eggs. Okay, you sell eggs, you get a dozen eggs. You don't buy eggs by the pound because there's things buying eggs by another way.
Well, what about watermelons? Watermelons are always counted.
They are counted, but then when you come to pay for it, they put up the scale.
No, they don't. Not at all.
Well, sometimes yes, and sometimes not. Some places sell by. Sometimes they sell by the pound, and sometimes they
If you
don't.
have a trip watermelon with a Meningeal worm, and you don't know which, and then the.
You could have a tray for watermelon.
Yeah, maybe the seeds have holes in it.
And the sheikh brought one of the tops of the watermelon, so he doesn't know which bottom of the watermelon because they cut it into 4 quarters.
It could be from Shemitah, and it would be tzvicha, and you can't eat it. Okay, so there are three sheets in the Gemara as to what is considered davar shebiminyan, and the din is like this: the Shulchan Aruch says, like Rabbi Akiva. According to the Shulchan Aruch, we're good, no problem. In all these cases, with something that's bottle, we don't have to worry about it being davar shebiminyan. The Ramah, which Ashkenazim follows, the Shulchan Aruch follows Rabbi Akiva. The Ramah goes like Rabbi Yochanan, who says there has to be something you always count. So it's a little more than 7 things, but again, it's not going to be relevant to us because all of our cases over here, everything that we have is not always sold by the number. Okay, everything that we have is sold, even a chicken. Okay, you could buy a whole chicken. You buy a chicken, but you could the chickens also get sold by the pound. But according to Reish Lakish, that it's sometimes counted, then seemingly the meat is a davar shebiminyan, and the Shach and the Taz say that you should be machmer for that shita, except if there's going to be a big loss, a big hefsid.
How much
If
is
there's going to be a hefsid, then you don't have to. Now,
how much is an already shechted?
Wait. Now, in our case, all the 4 cases that I told you was not one guy who has a little shayla. We're talking about a whole slaughterhouse worth of meat. Think about it. Think of our cases. We have they found the sheep head, and now there's 50 sheep left behind that are going to be considered treif if we can't let it be bottled. Or we have our skirt from in some surface case. He had a skirt that was the sheikhut realized was treif, and 8 cows were shafted. I don't know how many cows were shafted, so that's a hefsid. So we don't have to worry about davar shebiminyan. Even those who are machmir like Reish Lakish say that if it's a hefsid, you could be mekel. Therefore,
how much is a
50
shechted
sheep?
cut up, and how much is one shechted cut up cow or sheep worth?
A lot of money.
Like $1,000, $5,000.
I don't know. No, let's say $1,000. I don't know. So it's worth a lot of money.
$50,000.
Okay, now, that's one shayla. There's another shayla, and that is something called, this is not on the screen, I'm sorry guys, Chatichah, hareuyah, lehiskabed. Okay? Anybody want to guess what that is? Chatichah, hareuyah, lehiskabed.
I know.
Okay, so wait a second, see if anybody else has a chance first. Okay, do one more time. A chatichah.
Cuts of meat.
A piece. A chatichah means a piece. Hareuyah. That's fit lehiskabed.
To be honored.
Very good. That is that you would honor somebody with that piece. Okay, so let's say you have a veggie burger. You say no, that's not the kind of thing you'd want to serve the company who comes to your house. Is to give a veggie burger. What happens if you have a ribeye? What happens if you have a ribeye steak? Then that is chatichah lehiskabed. It's something that you would serve to important people who came to your house. You would serve to rega. It depends who. So you a chatichah
Some came in, I would kick him out the door and put a foot in his place where he sits. Okay. And leave a big muddy shoot.
So a chatichah lehiskabed means something that's so kosher that you would serve it to company, and that is also not bottle. Again, bottle means
we serve vegetables, so we can't ruby.
Bottle means
Can Ruby?
And ruby. She's my aunt.
so chatichah lehiskabed is something that's so kosher you serve the company. It can't be bottled. Okay, so tell me something, guys. Is a sheep chatichah lehiskabed?
Which part?
Which part? That's a good question. What do you mean by that, Yaakov?
Well, I think it's better than a veggie burger.
Some parts more.
Sometimes more kosher. Okay.
The tongue is kosher.
Anybody else?
I think so, Abba. Because we're going to stay by the best out. Even most of the sheep, most of the sheep, I think, is
Chatichah lehiskabed? Okay. Okay, Red, what do you think? You think a sheep is a chatichah lehiskabed?
I'm just part of it.
that we
Just part of
put
it?
on the spot.
I don't know.
Okay.
I think, like with, Avram, I think it would serve the unclear, that's when it's like considered very conscious.
Okay.
It's not Cheney, I don't think cold cuts would be,
Okay. Well, how about lamb chops? Okay, how about lamb chops? Okay,
Ooh, lamb chops.
Okay, wait, there's one little problem here, guys. There's one little problem here. We're in a slaughterhouse. Okay, in a slaughterhouse.
Yeah.
We're talking about all of our cases are in a slaughterhouse. Okay, there's no lamb chops over here. There's a side of beef. There's a side of a lamb that has in it lamb chops, but there isn't a plate of beautiful lamb chops on it.
Oh, most of it's just like fat and disgusting.
No, it has nothing to do with that. It's a raw piece of meat that's sitting there. Okay, it hasn't even been kosher yet.
Of course you're going to
That by
cook it.
itself considered kosher?
So that's a machlokes.
Well, you're not going to serve raw meat to someone.
So that's a machlokes. The Shulchan Aruch says to be considered chatichah lehiskabed, it has to be literally ready to eat. You have to have it all ready to go that you could serve it to a person. Shulchan Aruch would say is no problem chatichah lehiskabed. But the Ramah says, which Rav Ashkenazim says that unless you have to do a lot of work to it, it's considered chatichah lehiskabed. So if you have to just salt it and cook it, that's still considered Chatichah lehiskabed.
Well, I don't know how often...
So he would say is, since the lamb chops just need to be kosher and cooked, that's considered Chatichah lehiskabed.
I don't know how often you grill, Alva, but I think grilling is a lot of work.
Okay, but he means a lot of work, like still taking off the hide and things like that. Okay, it's much more serious work.
What?
No, like things like Nicker did that are very labor intensive.
Right. So it depends on how much has to be done. So according to the Rama, seemingly this meat should not be buffalo because it's Chatichah lehiskabed. The Kosher has talks about it. Why maybe he should, when you could be making according to the Shulchan Aruch, but in all of these kind of cases, someone needs to go sit and speak to a Rav about it because this problem of Chatichah lehiskabed, again, we're talking about a piece of meat. A piece of meat typically has something in it that's Chatichah lehiskabed. We have Yehuda's ribeyes, or we have a lamb chops, or something else, or tongue, and therefore that would potentially make it not be buffalo. Okay, I'm finished. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, what time is yours?
I can't help you with that. Any questions for me?
Yeah, did you bring the ice cream with you?
No.
Ooh, ice cream.
Okay, guys, thank you.